What do you want to be when you grow up? Could very well be the most popular question you have as a kid. Sure, people will ask you how old you are, ask you maybe which sports teams you support, but this is the big question for small kids. And it should be the big question because North America obsesses with determining who we will be. We obsess with titles, careers, degrees, majors, certifications. It's non-stop. Even literary popular poets and literary giants beg us and urge us to think about what is it you will do with your one precious life. It's a big, big question. And so I delved into this material curiously, and I did the obvious thing. I searched the internet, and I looked for what has been asked about this question. And I came across a fascinating poll from Morning Consult. They inquired on groups of Gen Z and millennials and asked them the big question, what is it you want to be? And they responded. 57% of Gen Z and millennials answered confidently when asked, what do you want to be? And they answered, what I want to be is an influencer. 45% were much more practical. They answered, what I want to be is rich. They were clever, but I think they missed the point. Because we answer this big what question with soulless vigor. We neglect to build character in our obsession for the end goal. Now, some people, I think, have a wiser view on it. Greg McKeown, who wrote the wonderful book, The Essentialist, said imploringly, what if we asked our students, before they embarked on the race to nowhere, what if we asked them to think about what is it they could actually contribute meaningfully to humankind? That's a profound question that Amanda Ripley also asked. She wrote an equally interesting book called The Smartest Kids in the World. She followed cohorts of children from various cultures around the world, looked at their aptitude tests and their schooling careers, and assessed which strategies were more successful. Interestingly, she found differences and patterns. In America, as we might suspect, Americans were obsessed with the GPA, the final mark, the end goal. Other cultures, like Finland, which ranked very high on the aptitude scores, was not worried about the final results. In Finland, they obsessed with grit and failure. They encouraged their kids to learn from the very failure that we in North America kind of shun. The difference ultimately is that in our culture, and Canada ranked quite strongly, but generally in Western cultures, we forget to plan to be human. And it's such an integral part of it. Now, what's the impact of that? Well, it's unfortunately very stark. Because while America outspends every other country on the face of the planet on education, they fall almost last on the aptitude tests. And while Finland, as I'm sure you know, has scored top of the list on the happiness scale for the last 10 years running, American youth report consistent and persistent sadness to an alarming rate of 40%. Ultimately, what this tells us is that achievement is not a destination. Our parents mostly had it right when they said, getting there is half the fun. I say mostly because I think getting there is all the fun. What we learn on a journey is more valuable than anything waiting for us at the destination. We just choose not to think that way. And I believe that the problem is that we focus so much on what we will become that we forget the essence of who we will become. And therefore, who might very well be the better starting question that we don't ask our children. Form people, not careers. You'll be forgiven for thinking this is a snazzy slogan from one of the posh Finnish universities we just talked about. Not quite. This slogan is 500 years old. It is the motto of the Jesuit order, famous for their educational institutions. And for 5 centuries, the Jesuits have been teaching based on a principle of cura personalis, which is really a holistic way of looking at the person and making sure that we train and develop the mind, the heart, the body, and the soul, the totality, if you will. Because the Jesuits have understood that what our youth needs is clarity, not confidence. Our young people lack direction, but not depth. I've talked a lot about the Finnish people. Let's go next door, nearby to Norway. Anybody watch the Olympics lately? Remarkable that a country with a population of 5 million people, that's less than Toronto, remarkably, this tiny Olympic powerhouse dominates the medal standings over and over and over again. How do they do that? Spoiler alert, it isn't the funding, it isn't the budgets, and it isn't intense specialization. In fact, it's the opposite. In fact, in Norway, they encourage kids to try a variety of sports. They don't make them specialize. They make sure that the kids understand the identity of winter sports. They win the child, and the podium wins itself. That's because the Norwegians have understood that the athletes need to understand who they are. Now, in this who versus what dilemma, one person, an unlikely person, most embodies what I'm sharing with you. His name is Doug Dietz. He's an industrial designer. That's what Doug is, or so he thought. And Doug's chief contribution to humankind was to design these incredible machines, MRI machines. Doug was mandated for General Electric to redesign top-of-the-line, most impressive, most powerful MRI machine ever designed. And he rose to the challenge as what he was, an industrial designer, and he built the best that there was. On the day that the machine launched at Pittsburgh General Hospital, Doug went early, like a proud father ready to show off his child, and Doug waited at the hospital. And he peered outside the room where his machine, his beautiful machine, was installed. And down the hall, he saw a fairly large individual walking towards the room. And Doug wondered, is that the gentleman who's going to be the first patient? And he continued watching, and soon he saw a smaller woman behind the man. And he then wondered, okay, maybe it's his wife who's going to be the first patient. And as they got closer, he heard them speaking, and they were saying, it's going to be okay, honey. And it was only then that Doug noticed the 6-year-old daughter between the father and mother, who was actually the first patient. A lot of people don't realize 80% of children who undertake an MRI need to be sedated. The little girl reached the room and immediately started to cry, and she needed to be sedated. Doug also cried that day. Doug understood that his design success was actually a human failure. The Italian author Cesare Pavese famously said, "We do not remember the days, we remember the moments." Doug realized on that fateful day in Pittsburgh that he designed the forest but forgot about the trees. He designed for the days but forgot about the magic of the moment. He assembled his team, explained the failure, owned the failure, and essentially said, what I am is an industrial designer, but who I am is a storyteller. And he redesigned the machine. He took what was a beautiful, magnificent performing machine, and he turned it into an amusement park ride. And once again, he assembled his team, and he went to the hospital, and once again, impatiently waited for patient zero. And as fate would have it, once again, patient zero was another little girl. She walked into the room, went onto the machine, and Doug explained all of these adventures they had been through to her parents, who were nervously waiting. Often the parents have as nervous a time as the children. When the little girl finished, she got off the machine and tugged at her mother's dress, as little girls may do. And the mom impatiently said, I'm speaking to the man who designed this machine. What is it that is so important that you need to tell me now? And the little girl again burst into tears and looked at her mom and said, I'm sorry to have bothered you. I just wanted another turn on the ride. It was then that Doug truly understood that who he was so much more powerful than what he ever could have been. Those of you with kids are familiar with FOBO, I'm sure, or at least FOMO, fear of missing out. FOBO is the new one. It's fear of better offers. For instance, hey, a bunch of us are going out afterwards for Beaver Tails. You want to come? I had to get a shameless plug in, I'm sorry. And the response to that might be, yeah, I might join if nothing else comes up. We are so busy planning for milestones that we are afraid to live. Another great book, Dr. Dan Baker of Canyon Ranch fame, What Happy People Know. He knows a thing or two about fear. Dr. Baker followed professional athletes who were involved in tragic accidents and couldn't compete anymore. He followed poor people who won great fortunes in the lottery. He followed rich people who lost their fortunes in bankruptcy. And at every step, he watched and observed and tried to learn, what is it that still makes some of these people happy? What is it that allows some of these souls to preserve happiness even in unexpected times? And he learned a lot about the planning of milestones and the fear that's involved in that. And perhaps what Dr. Baker can teach us most is that we need to pause the race. We need to reset the prize. His ultimate criteria for happiness was one word: curiosity. When life gives you lemons, we make the proverbial, but we have to be curious to first ask, what is it I can do with these lemons? Dr. Baker teaches us that it's not the salary, the career, the title. Those are important, but they're not as important as who we will be to make the impact. Resetting the prize allows curiosity to triumph over fear. And so I leave you with this challenge. Next time you're around a youngster, resist from asking what you will do with all its finite possibilities. Ask instead who you will become, and open up for that child a world of endless curiosity. Thank you.